The highly anticipated debate was finally here. CNN's Prime Debate, one of the most watched political discussion programs, was about to air a special episode that had everyone talking. The studio was buzzing with excitement as producers and crew members rushed around, adjusting cameras and finalizing the last-minute details. Tonight's guests were former President Donald Trump and Xavier Musk, the 25-year-old son of billionaire tech mogul Elon Musk. The reason for their appearance? A heated debate about the future of AI, politics, and business in America. The stage was set. Two podiums stood opposite each other, and the tension in the room was already palpable. The audience had filled every seat, and millions more were tuned in from their homes, eager to see how this conversation would unfold. As the countdown to live broadcast began, Xavier Musk leaned into his microphone, his sharp blue eyes scanning the room. Unlike his father, Xavier had taken a different path, a mix of business and political activism, and he wasn't afraid to challenge anyone, even Donald Trump. The cameras zoomed in, and we're live in 3, 2, 1. The host, Mark Callahan, a well-respected journalist known for moderating intense debates, smiled at the camera and greeted the audience. Good evening, America. Tonight, we have a discussion that might shape the future of technology, economy, and leadership in our country. With us, we have former President Donald Trump and entrepreneur Xavier Musk. The camera panned between the two men. Trump, as always, sat with confidence, adjusting his red tie. Xavier, younger but equally self-assured, gave a polite nod. Mark continued. Let's dive right into the main topic: the increasing influence of AI in politics and business. Mr. Musk, you have been vocal about your stance that AI should have a role in shaping policies. While Mr. Trump, you have strongly opposed this idea. Let's start with you, Xavier. Why do you believe AI is essential for the future of America? Xavier Musk smiled slightly before speaking. Because, unlike humans, AI doesn't have personal biases, emotional impulses, or corruption. It can analyze millions of data points instantly and make logical decisions that benefit the majority. We have seen how outdated policies have failed us time and time again. AI is not just a tool, it's the future of decision-making. The audience murmured. Some nodded in agreement, while others looked skeptical. Trump, who had been listening with his arms crossed, leaned forward and smirked. Let me tell you something, kid, Trump said, his voice commanding as always. I've built an empire, I've led a country, and I've seen what happens when people rely too much on machines. AI is great for your little video games, but let's be real. It can't run a country. We need strong leaders, real decision-makers, not robots. Xavier's jaw tightened. He had expected resistance, but Trump's dismissive tone made it personal. With all due respect, Mr. Trump, Xavier replied, his voice steady. Leaders like you have made decisions based on ego, emotions, and personal gains. AI doesn't have those weaknesses. Maybe it's time to stop pretending that one man's instincts are better than an entire network of intelligence. The tension in the studio skyrocketed. Trump leaned in even more, pointing a finger. Listen, I've dealt with guys like you before. Arrogant, think they know everything. But let me tell you something. America doesn't need a machine running the show. It needs real leadership, and that's something no AI can replace. Xavier didn't flinch. Then maybe that's why the younger generation is looking for a change. We don't want leadership that's stuck in the past. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. The debate had just begun, and already things were spiraling into an all-out confrontation. The tension in the studio was thick enough to cut with a knife. The audience, initially expecting a structured debate, now found themselves witnessing an outright ideological battle. The host, Mark Callahan, cleared his throat, attempting to maintain order. Gentlemen, let's keep this discussion constructive. But Trump wasn't done. He turned directly toward Xavier Musk, his signature smirk returning. Listen, kid, you're young, you've got your fancy degrees, and you probably think you're the smartest guy in the room. But let me tell you something. You haven't built anything real. I've built businesses, I've run a country, and I know what works. You're just another rich kid trying to sound important. A wave of murmurs rushed through the crowd. Xavier sat up straighter, his jaw tightening. He had been waiting for this moment. He knew Trump would attack him personally. Mr. Trump, let's not pretend that your success was built purely on intelligence. You inherited a fortune and had decades of connections. My father? He built Tesla, SpaceX, and Neuralink from nothing. And me? I didn't take a dime from him. I created my own path. The audience erupted in applause at Xavier's rebuttal. Trump rolled his eyes, shaking his head as he waved dismissively. Oh, please. Your father's success doesn't mean you're qualified for anything. And AI? It's a crutch for people who don't want to do the hard work. Xavier leaned forward, locking eyes with Trump. Hard work? Like bankrupting multiple businesses? Like dodging responsibility when things go south? The audience gasped. Trump's expression darkened. You know what your problem is, Xavier, Trump said, his voice dropping to a sharp, controlled tone. You think just because you know how to code, you can run the world. But you're not a leader. You're a boy who grew up with the internet, playing with computers instead of making real decisions. Xavier exhaled slowly, his hands gripping the table slightly. And you think leadership is yelling the loudest? Maybe that worked in the past, but the world is changing. AI is the future. And leaders like you? You're the past. The studio went silent. The host quickly intervened before things escalated further. All right. Let's take a step back. We're going to a commercial break. But when we return, we'll dive into the economic implications of AI and automation. Stay with us. The screen faded to black, but in the studio, the battle was just beginning. As the cameras cut to commercial, the energy in the studio remained tense. The audience whispered among themselves, still digesting what had just happened. But on stage, the real drama was only beginning. Xavier Musk removed his mic earpiece, leaning forward toward Trump with a sharp glare. You're trying to discredit me, but you're the one afraid of change, Xavier said, his voice calm but firm. Trump, still sitting back in his chair, smirked. Afraid? Kid, I've gone toe-to-toe with world leaders. I've taken on the media, the establishment, and I've won. You? You haven't even started the game. Xavier crossed his arms, studying Trump's expression. The world you ruled is fading, Mr. Trump. You mock AI, but even your own businesses rely on it. The difference is, I embrace the future. You fear it. Trump's eyes narrowed slightly, his smirk fading. I don't fear anything, he said, his voice suddenly lower. But I know a scam when I see one. Artificial intelligence making decisions for people? That's a disaster waiting to happen. Before Xavier could respond, a producer rushed over, waving for them to get ready for the next segment. We're live in 30 seconds, gentlemen. Please keep it professional. Trump adjusted his tie, his expression returning to his usual confidence. You ready, genius? He quipped. Xavier smirked. Always. The countdown began. 3, 2, 1. The cameras were back, the host smiling as if nothing had happened. Welcome back to Prime Debate, where former President Donald Trump and tech entrepreneur Xavier Musk are discussing the role of AI in the future of leadership. The next round was about to begin, and this time, neither man planned to hold back. As the cameras went live again, the host, Mark Callahan, took a deep breath and smiled at the audience. Welcome back. We're diving into the core question. Can AI and technology replace traditional leadership? Xavier Musk believes in a future driven by AI decision-making, while former President Trump argues that leadership requires human intuition. Let's continue. Trump leaned in first, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Replace leadership with AI? Great idea. Let's have robots making military decisions. Maybe your little machines can negotiate peace deals too? Xavier remained unfazed. AI doesn't replace leadership, Mr. Trump. It enhances it. It eliminates corruption, bias, and impulsive decision-making. That's why people are excited about the future, not looking back to the past. Trump chuckled, shaking his head. People aren't excited about it, kid. They're terrified. Look around. AI is replacing jobs, running social media, even writing news articles. And who controls it? A handful of tech elites who think they know what's best for everyone. That's not democracy. That's a dictatorship of algorithms. The audience murmured, some nodding in agreement, while others whispered amongst themselves. Xavier leaned forward, his tone sharpening. And letting billionaires and career politicians make all the decisions has worked out so well, right? Maybe AI wouldn't need to control anything if human leaders didn't make such a mess of the world. Trump raised an eyebrow, his smirk widening. Oh, so now you want AI to govern the world? What's next? Electing a supercomputer as president? You sound just like those Silicon Valley guys who think they're gods. The crowd gasped. Xavier's eyes narrowed. At least Silicon Valley is building something. All you do is tear things down. Trump's face darkened. I built businesses. I built an economy. I rebuilt American pride. You? You just inherited your daddy's obsession with technology and think that makes you special. A wave of gasps and scattered applause rippled through the audience. Xavier gritted his teeth. I don't live in my father's shadow. I'm shaping the future while you're stuck rewriting the past. Trump pointed a finger, his voice rising. And you think some AI program will replace real leaders? I'd love to see a robot handle a national crisis, negotiate with foreign dictators, or stand up to the media like I have. Xavier shook his head, his frustration building. Maybe if leaders didn't act like egotistical reality TV stars, AI wouldn't have to fix their mistakes. The crowd erupted, half in shock, half in cheers. The host, Mark Callahan, quickly stepped in. All right, let's take a breather before we... But Trump stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. I don't need a breather. I've debated world leaders. This kid is nothing. Xavier stood up too, his voice steady. Then prove it. Debate me on the future, not just your past. The audience roared, sensing the debate had gone far beyond a simple discussion. The cameras kept rolling. This was no longer just a debate. This was war. The tension on stage was unbearable. The host, Mark Callahan, nervously glanced at the producers behind the cameras. The control room was buzzing. This debate was going viral in real time. Trump and Xavier stood face to face, neither backing down. You want a debate about the future? Trump said, stepping forward. Fine. Let's talk about the reality you're so eager to ignore. Xavier crossed his arms. Go ahead. Enlighten me. Trump smirked. People don't trust AI, Xavier. You tech guys think you're smarter than everyone else, but you don't live in the real world. You live in a bubble, making decisions that affect millions without ever stepping outside your echo chamber. Xavier scoffed. And politicians don't live in a bubble? You've spent your life surrounded by yes men, never admitting when you're wrong. Trump leaned in slightly, his voice lowering. You know what people want? They want leaders who understand them. Not robots, not billionaires playing God, not algorithms deciding their future. Xavier's jaw clenched. And yet, the world is falling apart under human leadership. Trump laughed coldly. Because of weak leaders, not because AI isn't in charge. You think a machine can understand human struggle? Can a computer feel patriotism? Can it protect a country? Xavier didn't blink. It doesn't need to feel anything. It just needs to do the job better than people who let their egos get in the way. The crowd gasped, and Trump's expression shifted. That's where you're wrong, kid, Trump said. Leadership isn't just about efficiency. It's about strength, intuition, and heart. Something AI will never have. For the first time, Xavier hesitated. Trump saw it and pressed harder. You want to talk about the future? Here's a reality check. People like you don't run the world. The American people do. Xavier's fists clenched at his sides. And yet, those same people are tired of being let down by leaders like you. The audience was in chaos. Some cheering, some shouting, some recording every second on their phones. The host, sensing the conversation was about to explode even further, quickly intervened. Gentlemen, we're going to take a short commercial break. But Xavier wasn't finished. One question, Mr. Trump. Trump narrowed his eyes. Go ahead. Xavier stepped forward, his voice sharp. If you had AI to advise you back when you were president, would you have ignored it, like you ignored half of your human advisors? The crowd erupted. Trump's eyes flashed. He took a deep breath, glanced at the cameras, then turned back to Xavier with a look that said one thing. You just crossed a line. The room was electric. The tension between Trump and Xavier had reached its peak, and every camera was locked in on their faces. The audience was on the edge of their seats, knowing something historic was about to happen. Trump stared at Xavier for a long, heavy moment. Then, in a move no one expected, he stepped back, straightened his tie, and gave a slow nod. You know what, kid? You're not worth my time. The audience gasped. Trump turned away from the podium. The host, Mark Callahan, panicked. Wait, Mr. Trump, are you? But Trump ignored him. He turned to the cameras and gave one last pointed glance before stepping away from the stage. Trump was walking off. The room erupted. Half the audience cheered wildly, chanting Trump's name. The other half was in absolute shock, whispering and debating what had just happened. Xavier, standing alone on the stage, clenched his fists. He had come here to challenge Trump, to prove that the old ways of leadership were outdated. But he never expected Trump to just walk away. Is this how you handle the future? Xavier called after him. By running away from it? Trump paused at the edge of the stage. Without turning around, he said over his shoulder, No, kid. I just don't argue with people who don't understand history. Then, without another word, Trump walked out of the building. The cameras zoomed in on Xavier, capturing the flicker of frustration in his eyes. He had won the battle, but had he lost the war? Social media exploded. Within minutes, clips of the debate were trending worldwide. Trump walks off. Xavier vs. Trump. Future vs. legacy. Some headlines read, Trump humiliates Xavier Musk in live debate. Trump walks away. Was it a weakness or a power move? Xavier Musk pushes too far? Did he just end his own career? News commentators debated endlessly. Trump's walk-off was pure dominance. Xavier Musk exposed a major flaw in Trump's leadership style. Did Trump just prove that AI-powered leadership is a threat? Xavier watched the reaction from his phone, sitting in his private suite, scrolling through the chaos. Trump, meanwhile, remained completely silent. No tweets, no press statements, nothing. And that was the most powerful move of all. 1 week later, Trump finally broke his silence. He walked onto a stage in front of a massive crowd. The energy was electric. Thousands of supporters waving flags, chanting his name. He leaned into the microphone and smirked. "So, I hear some guy thinks, I should run the world." The crowd booed loudly. "Look, folks, I'm all for technology. I love technology. But let me tell you something. America doesn't need a robot running the show. It needs strong leaders, people with guts, with experience, not kids who've never worked a day in their life." The audience roared. Meanwhile, Xavier was preparing for his own speech. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The end, or just the beginning? As Trump continued to speak, Xavier watched the broadcast, his expression unreadable. This wasn't the end of their fight. This was just the start of a new battle. A battle for the future. Who really won? You decide. What a debate. Whether you're on Trump's side or Xavier Musk's, one thing is clear. This was a conversation no one will forget. Who do you think had the stronger argument? Let us know in the comments. And if you don't want to miss more explosive debates, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. See you next time.